This is TWiT.
You know, before this show began, I had a different story of the week in here. And then John Ashley at the studio threw a link into Slack, because Slack is awesome. I saw it immediately. We already talked about that. And thought, I'm going with this one instead, because this is some late-breaking news that's really interesting. HBO Max is going to get all of Warner Media's 2021 movie catalog on the service, and it's going to release all of the films that they had planned for 2021 are going to release on HBO Max the day that they hit the theater. And that's a pretty big deal. Obviously, the coronavirus, is really transforming so many things, but especially how movies, how films are passed along to viewers. So many films this year have gone straight to streaming services instead of the theater, because people just aren't going to the theater. Either they can't or they don't want to. Maybe they're afraid about, entering into a movie theater with a bunch of other people and what that might mean for their health. So there's just a number of reasons why people aren't going to the movie theaters. And I think the theater industry is really, really hurting as a result of it. I don't know that a deal like this necessarily makes it better for the theaters. It feels like everything is just moving faster towards this kind of simultaneous release at home and in the theater, where the theater becomes an option instead of a necessity if you want to watch a movie that's coming out immediately. Some of us have really great home theater systems and setups, and so going into a movie theater might be less of a requirement unless you just really love the experience, which I do. But there's going to be some details around this. So films are going to hit HBO Max for 1 month. That's 31 days when they release in the theater as well. This is going to hit HBO Max and then leave until the period of time that it starts to go, the normal period of time where it would hit the streaming services. So one could imagine a few months later, it gets a different release. I don't know if when it hits HBO Max, if that means, because we've seen some of these services when it's a paid service and I subscribe to it, but then a major movie ends up getting released through it, that you end up having to pay extra for that. I don't know. I couldn't find any details on that, if that applies here, or if you just have with your HBO Max subscription the ability to watch these without paying extra.
One example was that Wonder Woman, when it comes out later this month, is included, so you don't have to pay extra for that. So one could assume that maybe you don't have to.
So you do have to pay extra for the Wonder Woman.
No, Wonder Woman, you don't have to at all. It's included in the service.
Okay.
You're not paying $30 like you did for Mulan, for example.
Right. Okay, well, that's good then. I suppose that's good if you're a consumer that wants to watch these things. That might be not so good if you're one of the people of the production of the film that wants to make as much money as possible to make the most impact. But The Matrix 4, Dune, there's a Sopranos prequel called The Many Saints of Newark, The Suicide Squad. Basically, their entire movie catalog that was going to come out this year or in 2021 is going to hit HBO Max on the day that it releases. All films are going to be released to 4K, Ultra, HD, and HDR. Interesting turn of events for the theater industry and for the movie industry. What do you think, Mikah?
So I've never really been into, first of all, movie theaters, going to movies in general, but also movies in general. I don't know why, but I'm just not a big movie person. And perhaps it's because I prefer the 1 minute video to the 3 minute video. No, I kid, because there are some shows that I watch. Netflix's The Crown is a good example of this, where essentially you're watching a big old doggone movie over the course of episodes, and I can sit and binge watch half a season in a day, and it's wonderful for me. I love it, but it's just sort of a mental block when it comes to movies. I just don't like movies. That said, I am excited that as a person who has made every possible decision that can possibly made to stay home, to be safe in this pandemic, I am happy that, the movie theater and Hollywood is paying attention to that and is trying to make it so that folks can watch those. I think that's a responsible thing to do. So that's good. And I have to say that even though I don't like movies, it takes a lot for something to overcome my distaste for films, and Wonder Woman fits well within that group. So I am looking forward to seeing Wonder Woman from the comfort and safety of my own sofa when that is available. But yeah, I don't have too much emotion tied to movie theaters, and so because of that, I don't think I'll be on the front lines or the backup crew for going out there and shouting that we need to keep movie theaters alive.
Yeah, I mean, I would be I would be really sad if movie theaters became a thing that was no more, like a distant memory. And I don't believe that would actually happen. I think there's always a room for a movie theater, just because, I mean, from the beginning, from the birth of film, there has always been movie as an event to go and share with, as an experience with a room full of other people on a very large screen. That's just always been a thing. I personally believe, and maybe it's a rose-tinted view, think that there will always be room for that. With purists and everything like that. I used to work in a movie theater. I managed a movie theater for years. So I've always been a big fan of film from a young age. So I have an attachment to the movie theater experience because of that. But I also realized that in the last 10 years, so much more of my habit of consuming movies and TV and everything happens in the living room, because our TVs have gotten bigger, our home entertainment setups have gotten nicer, and now the content is in many ways equally as good. Even, like you say, even TV content is equally as good as a lot of film content. Like, what is the delineation between one and the other? Lately, it's really hard to find the difference between the two. There's a show that I'm watching right now called Industry on HBO, and it could very easily be there's no distinction between that being a film that just happens to be 45 minutes and a film that you see on screens, and even on all that Android, Ron a couple of days ago, Ron Richards mentioned that he did a podcast that was all about the realm, where we're at right now with these films ending up coming on streaming instead of in the movie theater, and how they don't feel like films anymore because they're not on the big screen. And I think that kind of points to what you're talking about, is that just experientially and maybe even generationally to a certain degree, there are those of us that is an experience. Going to the theater is an experience that is just tied intrinsically to watching a film. And there are a lot of people that that's not necessary. Now that's not necessary. And especially with this news, that's really not necessary. And so, yeah, I don't know what that leads to.
And of course, we should give a shout out to your generation, Gen X, where,
Thanks,
Mikah. You mentioned you're very welcome. I'm sorry, Gen X.
I felt so left out earlier, but I've
got a lot of friends in that generation and family in that generation. So you're all just so kind and not gripey about all the rest of us.